Hi, Catherine. Nice to see you.
It's so nice to see you too, Raphael. Thank you for having me.
Did you get a tan this summer?
I did not get a tan. I'm very sun cautious, but I did get a lot of, or have a lot of ice cream with my kids. Sunshine. This is my first day. Yesterday was my first day back to work, like really focusing again. So that was nice.
Well,
How about you?
On September 2nd, you posted a picture of Lake George signifying the end of vacation time.
Yes.
Yeah. So how was the summer for you? When you went out to Lake George, were you off the grid?
I was pretty much off the grid. I always check in with work in some respect, but I had about 300 unread emails when I got back, which I consider a good sign. But we went camping. We were at a house with limited Wi-Fi, and it was great to be present with my family in that way.
I can imagine. So let's talk a little bit about you and your work. And so you advise collectors and homeowners and galleries, and you bring them all together to make something happen. Am I right? Is that more or less what you do?
Yes, we help clients buy interesting contemporary art that speaks to their taste, completes their space, and brings them long-term enjoyment.
You know, by listening to what you just said, it's, you know, what comes to mind is the Japanese art of kintsugi, which is about bringing together the pieces of broken pottery by cementing them back together with gold dust. So you end up with this beautiful new work of art.
I love that. I hadn't heard of that.
Yeah. And you see the reconstituted vase, let's say, veined with gold, and it's really, really very attractive. And in some way, that's what you do. You bring together all these separate parts, and you bring them together, and what emerges from it is the product of your work, which is, you know, a work of art in and of itself.
Thank you. Yeah, I think a lot of clients come to us just wanting art, wanting something to fill the walls. And as they start the process, we see their enthusiasm grow for it. And they really get interested in different artists and what speaks to them, and learning more. And I consider that a win for the whole process, because they're engaged, and that engagement is going to foster long-term enjoyment, as well as better decision-making skills when they think about what to consider, what artists to consider supporting, what artists to consider following in life, and what artists to consider acquiring for their home.
Yeah, and I imagine that certainly on your part, that requires a good amount of empathy and respect.
Absolutely.
I can imagine you doing a good job for your clients and for the artists with that much empathy and respect that would be involved in, you know, in discharging the responsibility.
Absolutely.
Yeah, which is really important. So as part of your training, you earned a master's degree from Sotheby's in art business. Well, that must have been an eye-opener. You were introduced to what goes on behind the scenes, so to speak. Tell me about it a bit.
It was. I graduated from Williams College with a master's, or with a dual degree in art history and economics, which felt very disparate at the time. And I was thrilled to discover an art business program where I could get my master's that kind of merged those two fields. And so I went to Sotheby's in London, and I would say the best byproduct of that education was learning how many opportunities there are in the art world. It wasn't just curator, gallerist, or auction house. There were so many nuanced fields that you could enter into, including art advisory, but also art insurance, or management fields, or more academic fields. fundraising fields, marketing fields, so many different niches within the art world. And that education certainly exposed me to those and built my skill set in some of them that ultimately I used packaged together to create my own business.
So it sort of lifted the veil for you on all the myriad possibilities that you could engage in that field of choice for you.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How long was that course?
It was just over a year, I think 16 months or so.
And you spent all of it in London, all that time?
No, I spent just the academic year in London, and then I came back to New York for the dissertation portion.
Oh, really?
Because most of the research was done in New York. Yeah.
Oh. So as part of what you do, I imagine that when you have a new account, you take your clues from your clients, let's say, set of circumstances, and you design a program around that, sort of like an architect would do, right? You create a structure around the circumstances that are given to you to work with.
Yeah, absolutely. We onboard clients in a few ways. One is just through speaking with them and picking up on data points that we get from small talk. Another is seeing their home. And a third is our new client form that asks some poignant questions about what you love about your space, what you words that you would use to describe your ideal space, what you don't love, as well as some other questions that seem a little peripheral, but they help inform how we start our research process and the pieces that we ultimately recommend to each client.
Yeah, but they're not just going to invest in the art, they're going to have, or they will be living with the art for many, many years.
Absolutely.
So where is the advice? Is it a balance between investment and buying what one likes or loves?
Well, so many clients come to us and saying, I'm not necessarily interested in investing in art or making a huge profit, but I'd love if I bought something that appreciated, that would certainly be favorable. And I'd like to make sure that I'm spending my money wisely. So it's not going to be a purchase that's a complete sunk cost. It's a purchase that will potentially hold or appreciate in value. And then as we talk to them, as I said, they get more engaged, they build their trust in us. And the conversation around pricing and quality unfolds from there very organically. Typically, it happens in our presentations when we're showcasing a number of pieces at different price points. Clients will inquire about why something is more expensive or less expensive than the other. And with those comparables, we're really able to dive deep into the career trajectory of that particular artist, the scale of the work, the press that the artist has had, any publications. I know you've published at least one very successful book. So all of that comes into play when you're thinking about quality and value. And we relay those points in a very digestible way to our clients.
So there has to be some kind of at least residual resale value in the piece. That's an important factor in the decision-making process for your clients.
It depends on the client, but often that's the case. Yes, most often that's the case. You know, when we're doing full house projects, we generally apply the save and splurge method. There are places to save and there are places to splurge. You know, if you want a little,
that's an interesting expression.
Yeah, if you want a little knickknack for your powder room, we can definitely find something interesting, more interesting than art.com, definitely, but that's affordable and suitable for a bathroom. But there may not be any holding value there.
Yes.
I really support full transparency and helping my clients know what they're buying. So we're very communicative about those characteristics of an artwork so that clients can make wise informed decisions.
So there's a difference between collecting art and accessorizing a space.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think you were touching on that there are some aspects of it where you're just accessorizing space. And
yeah, I mean, we don't go into a project if we're fully just accessorizing. We're really not best suited for that. But if we're doing a project where a client is buying typically $5,000 and above for a given piece, then we'll help them get those pieces as well as some accent or accessory pieces if that's part of the project.
I think it's important to be able to do that and to be not to insist on being a purist throughout.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So in 2014, you created Mason Lane Art Advisory, and you serve corporate as well as private clients.
Yes.
And there must be quite a different mindset between the two, even though in the end you're still serving the tastes and the needs of human beings, because in corporate environments, of course, there are people moving around and living in those environments. But for you, there must be a different set of parameters, or is there?
For corporate clients?
Yes.
There are different parameters for sure. I would say the number one thing is it can't overtly tick anyone off.
That's defensive buying.
Yeah, it really is defensive buying. I think the balance is it needs to not be controversial and also be interesting. That's the key. It's really easy to not buy to buy art that's not controversial, but it's much harder to buy art that's not controversial that's also compelling and kind of has a point of view in an office and helps an office or brand showcase their taste and who they are and what they represent. We also look and talk a lot about the artists in the collection to ensure that they are diverse in many ways, for companies that value diversity, which I think thankfully so many do now. We want to make sure, for example, we did this one large corporate collection for an international company that has clients coming from all over the world, and it was really important to them that we have artists from Europe, Asia, South America. I'm trying to think of my continents, but every continent.
Because that communicates something to their staff, I imagine.
100%, and their clients.
And their clients, yes.
Yeah.
So they're branding themselves in a way through their collection.
The art helps brand them, absolutely.
Yeah, in a silent but very powerful way.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think it makes for a pleasanter environment for the people who spend so many hours of the day working in that environment.
Absolutely.
I remember, when I was doing business with Estee Lauder, there was art everywhere, on every wall, in every cubicle. And they have such an extensive collection that the staff was, I think, allowed to select which piece would hang on the walls in their cubicle.
Oh, wow. That's special.
Yeah, I think I got that right, but don't quote me.
I won't. But
the
Lauders are huge art supporters, and I've heard that about their art collection.
Yeah.
And that's probably I know that from past work experiences that's a fraction of it. They have a ton of stuff in storage as well that they circulate.
Yes. And the entire family is that way. It's
absolutely.
Both Leonard and Ronald are very much involved in the art world, as you well know. And so let's talk a little bit about the artists you work with. And as you mentioned, I'm a photographer, so I favorite photographers that you work with. Jessica Eaton, and she expresses herself in sort of like geometric color plays. And the product really is comes off more as colored light because the diaphanous quality of her work, and it's quite interesting. And I think she has received many awards for her work. And then there's Berndnaut Smilde from Amsterdam, who photographs these, or produces these little clouds on location where he's going to photograph them, and then he photographs them in situ, you know, and it's just so endearing, it's so well done and so original, and brings a smile to your face, and then admiration for the quality of the work. And then Doug Feldman, I love his panoramic intersection series. They're so well put together. How he combines the images and geometries and the overlappings, and it all really sings. It's really gorgeous, not to mention his installations and his uses of color. Yeah, can you tell us a little bit about these artists and your experience with them?
Sure. Jessica, I'll start with Jessica. She is a Canadian photographer that I learned about through my colleague in Toronto, because we have an office in Toronto. And she does these, as you said, kind of color field works that have a optical illusion quality to them. Yes. And she's taking items from her studio as inspiration for the forms that she's using, and then exaggerating some of the colors. And like you said, creating what looks to be multi-planed, a multi-planed series of color. And she does these in a way that prompts the viewer to wonder, is this a photograph? Is this an object I'm supposed to recognize, or is it completely abstract? So it tricks the eye a little bit. My colleague in Toronto just purchased 3 very large scale ones in the more square series for a large project in Ottawa that we're excited to release soon. And I think these pieces work so well individually to kind of create a really unique type of vignette, as well as a set, in this case 3, to create a very powerful space, in this case in Ottawa.
Will they be in the same space?
I'm sorry?
Will they be in the same space?
They're in the same space, and if I remember correctly, it's a double-heighted ceiling with a staircase and a balcony, and all 3 are on. Yeah, it's huge, and the architecture is incredible, but the art really highlights that architecture in the best possible way. So I love that Jessica Eaton's work can do that, and it feels very different close up than it does far away. So it works well in an area where you get both vantage points.
Yeah, very impressive.
Yeah, Berndnaut Smilde, like, I totally agree with what you said. It brings a smile to my face. He's this, I would call him a scientist, sculptor, and photographer at the same time, because he's figured out a way to develop clouds that last for just a few seconds. And then he takes as many photographs as possible in those few seconds.
Short period of time.
Yeah, and he chooses really interesting backdrops for that as well. Palaces or warehouses. Some are outdoors. I think the outdoor ones are beautiful. I think they're a little bit, they're not my favorite, because clouds exist outdoors, and I think the fun of it is also seeing a cloud indoors.
Yes, the contrast to the subject of the background, and also the luminosity of the cloud and the background. So one sets the other one off.
I agree.
And there's also a certain amount of tongue-in-cheek aspect in there.
I completely agree. And I always encourage clients to think about the art in a few ways, one of which is the process that the artist follow to create that work. And sometimes that's easy, and sometimes that doesn't come so naturally. And I think for photographs, particularly for let's imagine a landscape, a completely representational photograph. You're more focused on the subject matter in that case than the process the photographer went through to get that. I think that's the natural inclination for most people. With Smilde's work, what I like is that it forces you to really consider that process. How did that cloud get in there? Why is it inside a palace? So I like that it kind of reframes your thinking around that.
Yes. You can spend time around it and enjoy that piece of work every time you look at it, really.
Exactly. And for Doug Fogelson, his panoramics, same thing, especially with his chemical series, the colors are so curious that you see representational forms alongside abstracted ones that you're prompted to think, what is this? And your brain automatically tries to make sense of things. So you're trying to pull out trees or landscape or a hilltop with his work, and you can identify some of those, but your brain is trying to make sense of the rest. And so it just prompts you to think in a way that you don't have the opportunity to think in every day. And like you said, he's so skilled with color that those colors really add a richness to the work.
Tell me something, is a good artist an artist that's easy to work with?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't think so. I think a good artist, well, they're a good artist and they're a good artist to work with. A good artist is one that keeps you engaged somehow. And that can be, I think that's not just for one piece. I think that's through their career. You know, you follow a musician. I'm going to say this because my kids are obsessed with her right now, but you follow Taylor Swift, okay? Because you like one song, but then also you get into the stories, and her songs kind of reflect her life, and you become intrigued. And then there's a magazine that says she's engaged and people care and all that. But an artist can be similar in that it's not just one piece that keeps you interested. It's kind of their career and how they're taking what they used to do and making something new out of it, and changing style while still retaining some of the core elements that were key to their development. So I think a good artist keeps you engaged.
That's usually artists that have something to say. They're not just a flash in the pan.
Exactly.
Yeah, and the artists that you have selected are of that category. They have staying power, and their work has staying power. And also, you're not done with the piece simply by looking at it. You can come back to the piece time and time again, and it always has something more to yield. And that's, quality art. A piece of art that one can engage time and again with.
Absolutely. I completely agree.
So, Katharine, you often speak and you conduct seminars and webinars, and you mentor artists and professionals, and a lot of it on your own time. How do you find the time? What is that about? How much of your life is that part of your activity?
I think I'm pretty disciplined from everything in life except for my bedtime. Trying to get better about that. But I find waking up early, I wake up at 5:30 a.m. is the best way to start my day. I usually exercise and get stuff done before the rest of the world wakes up. That just sets me up for more success every day, I find. I definitely sleep in on the weekends to try and catch up, but it's really important to me to stay present with my kids, to be a good boss in my company and foster the careers of those who are working with me, and support artists. And so thinking about my priorities in that way helps me execute the tasks that I need to in order to meet those goals.
Yeah, and keep engaged and keep excited about what's next, I imagine.
Yeah, I've chosen work that's really interesting to me, and I plan activities for my kids that keeps them interested. So I think, I mean, I'm accidentally coming back to this theme of engagement, but I think that is key in feeling satisfied every day and meeting your goals.
Yeah, and I think it's about remaining curious about what's next.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, curiosity has a lot to do with it. You're a curious type of person.
I think so.
And when you look back to 2014, which is when you started your company, what do you see? And who do you see when you look at yourself then? And how does it feel now to travel back and
That's a good
experience what it was like?
Yeah, I haven't thought about that. I mean, at that time I had one very small child. She was 9 years old and we lived in a different place. And I envisioned this business being something that I would do on my own. And it was like that for about 2 or 3 years. And then it blossomed into building a team here in New York, very organically developing an office in Toronto with a friend and now business partner that I've known for, 15, 20 years. And now an office in the Midwest. So I definitely didn't see it growing in the way that it has, but I've always been very entrepreneurial. And if it didn't grow in this way, I'm guessing it would have grown in a different way, because that's just important to me, to keep me engaged, to have it be constantly changing and thinking about it in a new way.
When you say entrepreneurial, does that also say that you are a risk taker?
Yeah, I am. And I'm big into accountability. So the best way to get me to do something is to tell other people that I'm going to do it, so that I feel obligated in some way to honor what I said I was going to do. For example, a few weeks ago, I thought I might do this. It's called the Mount Greylock Summit Run, where I have family in the Berkshires. And so it's a run that's 8 miles up Mount Greylock. And I threw it out there to my family and said, I'm thinking about doing this. And then I was on the fence. And usually when I'm on the fence, I just tell someone that I'm going to do it. And that forces me to do it. So I told my family I was going to do it. And then I tried to quit. My daughter was like, you got to at least try. And so I just did the run this weekend, but it was fun. I was very proud of myself, but that accountability is key for me, to just keep me on track.
Are you attending any of the art events this weekend in New York City?
I am. I'm going to the Armory show, as well as Art on Paper, and I'm going to try and get to Independent Art Fair. Are you going to any, and do you have any other art fairs to recommend? I know there's a lot going on.
No, I don't have anything more to recommend, but I always wondered how they can schedule 3 mammoth fairs on the same weekend, because it's difficult to cover one, but to cover 3, particularly at Jacob Javits and the pier, it's huge.
It's confusing. I know.
There's a lot to see, and it's the same 3 days, they're long hours. But of course, there's a lot of work to be seen and a lot of connections to be made and friends to shake hands with. And
absolutely.
So, I'll start with the one on Madison Avenue because it's easy to go to.
Which one is that? Which one is that? Oh, yes. That's a good one too.
Yeah. So, and then I'll take it from there. But it's a lot to see and a lot to do. And a lot of miles to walk.
I completely agree.
Catherine, it was a delight to talk with you. And you have been very, very generous of your time and very generous about sharing a lot of things about your personal life and your professional life. And it's all very interesting and exciting. And of course, I advise everyone to go on your website and to visit your website, Mason Lane Art Advisory, and your Instagram feed where we can follow you, not moment to moment, but day to day, perhaps. And I thank you so very much for sharing all that.
It was a pleasure. Thank you. And likewise, I encourage everyone to check out your photography because I'm such a fan.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Raphael. Have a good day.
Thank you, Katharine.
Bye.
Bye.